and welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Laura Dodd, the head book buyer for Forbidden Planet, and we are joined today by our very special guest.
Hi!
We've been planning this for ages.
Yes, I'm so excited we're finally doing it. I'm really excited.
Yes. To discuss the principal moments and your Doctor Who novel that has sold out once again.
Has it? I didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
So we have ordered more and we will have to keep back in.
Everyone's been so lovely about that book. It's been such a wonderful surprise. Not that I didn't think it would do well, but I just had no idea because I've obviously never done anything like this. So I'm just like, oh my god, it's amazing.
Really we have thrown some
Who
stuff into the mix.
Stunning.
So yes. So, what can you tell us about Principle of Moments?
What can I tell you about Principle of Moments? It is an adventure story, first and foremost. It's a book that you read because you just want to be totally taken out of the time and place that you're in and put in a different galaxy, a place that you've never been with people you've never met, but who I hope start to feel like friends. It's got time travel, it's got romance, it's got a prophecy, it's got an evil space emperor, and it's got a bit of found family. And yeah, I think it's that when people read the book, I want them to kind of feel how they used to feel watching like childhood films, just totally like transported and kind of allowed to sort of like play in this other place and get really, that your heart in your throat moments, just oh my god, what's going to happen to these people. I just wanted to take people on a huge adventure that they'll never forget and bring them really somewhere fresh and new.
And it's funny you should say about the kind of, I suppose, childhood films, because there is kind of that feeling even watching old Star Wars films, but also things like The Labyrinth or Never Ending Story, that
exactly
kind of that wonder. It is.
I really wanted to kind of like evoke those exact like stories, but kind of like for a more adult audience. So it's not like fully, I wouldn't say it's like a fully adult book, but it's got like adult themes and it does deal with a few darker like bits of subject matter, but overall I wanted it to be like, you've grown up but you still love those films, then this is the book for you. And
so you won the Futures Prize. So how was that? Was it a shock, or were you just like, oh yeah?
No, it was a massive shock to me. I will never forget the day, not even the day that I found out I won, but the day I found out I was shortlisted, because that was so shocking to me, because they sort of did it in 2 stages, like really kept us on our toes. So I entered the prize in January of 2020, I think. Yes, it was, because it was just before everything got locked down. And it was kind of like, I've been trying to get this book published for a while. I hadn't had much success through like traditional routes of querying, because it is a very weird and uncategorizable book, and there's a lot of parts of it that shouldn't work but hopefully do work. And yeah, this was sort of a prize for underrepresented writers of science fiction, so I thought, okay, I'm about to give up on this book, but let me just submit and not reject myself, because I really still believed in the book and weirdly just knew in my heart that it would be published one day. I just didn't know how. So I submitted to it. The world went crazy, totally forgot that I'd done it. Then I got an email saying like, congratulations. I was like, what? And it turned out I was on a shortlist for the book, and I was in uni at the time, so I was over the moon, because I think on the shortlist you got like £800 or something. So I was like, I don't even need to win. This is amazing. Like, that's perfect. I'm so happy. And I was just like, wow, like this is like, I was so over the moon. And then later, I think it was sort of like a few months later, they announced the winner, and it was me. And I found out a few days before everyone else, I think, just because it was to tell me first. And I was just overjoyed. I didn't get to meet anyone involved in the prize for like another year and a half, because it all just kind of happened online, and I just sat on my laptop and was like, I've won, like that's amazing. And yeah, that was wonderful as well. It was amazing because it introduced me to Ben Aronovich, who gave the amazing quote for the front of the book, and has just been really supportive. And yeah, also got me my book deal, because it was run at the time. Only Gahraan was the only publisher who was supporting the prize. Obviously now everyone's seen the success, they've jumped on board. But yeah, that was what introduced me to my publisher and got my book published. So I'll always be grateful for the prize.
And has the book changed much like since its first inception?
Yeah, it has changed a lot. I started writing it when I was quite young, and do you know what, I think, hand on my heart, the ethos and the vibes of it and the love that I put into it has been preserved totally. I think from the first draft, I would probably estimate there's about like 30% of the original storyline and like actual words like made it through to the final draft, which I'm quite proud of. But yeah, there was like a massive overhaul at multiple points, like with my agent and my editor. But I would say that if the person I was when I started writing when I was younger read it now, they'd be like, yeah, this is still the principal moment. So that's wonderful, I think.
That's fantastic. And was there many kind of other books prior to this? Like, how long have you been
I've been writing for a while. Nothing like concrete or anything. I definitely had like a really cringe poetry phase when I was like 13. So that kind of helped me there. But yeah, I just mainly written lots of different kind of like, I wouldn't even say they were short stories, they were just kind of like ideas that I'd kind of explored for like maybe 10,000 or 15,000 words and then never completed. And would never revisit because they're so awful. But this was the first idea that I sat down and just kind of like sped away with it and just finished it in about, I don't even know, I think it was about a year or so. And suddenly it was just like, oh my gosh, it's done. And I remember getting to about 70% and thinking, I'm actually gonna finish this, because it was just like flowing, and I felt it was so it was quite fast paced, so I felt myself getting dragged along with the pace, and I just finished it, and I was so proud of myself. So yeah, this is the first full-length book I've written.
I love hearing about, obviously there's quite a few authors, and some authors we've had on FPTV who've got that kind of really awful, awkward first book that they got like hidden away in a sock drawer somewhere.
Yes.
I'm so intrigued to one day try.
No, I have this idea where I want to get authors like in a room and we all just read out the first page.
Oh my god, yes.
I would love to do that, yeah.
Or like you could get like a different person to read out the line and see if we could guess.
Oh, who's this who? That would be so good. I might take that idea.
Yes.
Or like get a professional audiobook reader to do it. That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't listen to that.
It's like, oh no. So we have in the Principle of Moments, there's so many things that I just adored in here. The reimagined London's like, oh, that's just so good. And yeah, the kind of, I suppose the overall love letter to readers of SFF, and especially to Black readers. So do you find that, obviously that's a very conscious thing that you've done, but do you find that sci-fi and fantasy in general is starting to do more in diversity?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I mean, I think if you just look at some of the most like loved fantasy authors, especially in the UK, I think that we're sort of like doing it well. You'll find writers from like every background. I think there's a long way still to go, but I think even just like the cover of my book, I think is helping like with visibility and like sort of asserting like, you know, all types of people write fantasy. Everyone from every background has a story to tell. And I think one of the things about my book that is so interesting is that it's very tropey and it's full of all the classic science fiction and fantasy tropes, and sometimes I feel like people kind of sort of say it as like, aha, you fell into all the tropes. And it's like, no, it was very much on purpose. It was very much something that I always set out to do, because I personally find it very satisfying to sort of have all of these tropes that I've loved and have like broken my heart, or like just been so epic when I've been reading them, and put characters in that role who look like me. I honestly think that's quite a almost like a subversive thing, where it flips the trope on its head in a sense, and sort of makes it into something totally different and uplifting for a group of people who have not been previously uplifted by fantasy before. Because I think people really underestimate the subconscious effect that having, you know, yourself always be the hero, or always be, you know, the chosen one can have on your confidence, and if that's not you, the effect that can also have. So that's something that I did very purposefully when I was trying to sort of like, you know, put more representation and exploration of Black characters in fantasy into the genre.
And there's definitely been as well, in horror in particular, kind of last year, I've read some absolutely amazing books. Johnny Compton's Spy House, the latest Tannery Do, the Reformatory. God, there's just
so good.
So it's just great to kind of actually be seeing more diverse stories
Yeah, I think it's literally just the concept of like the more the merrier. Like I just think the more people that you invite into this space with genuinely good stories to tell, we can only all walk away more enriched and more sort of like, you know, like we're all at the end of the day just fans of stuff, like cool stuff. Yeah. So like more cool stuff I think is never a bad thing. You know, if you just take it down. So I think, yeah, if you'll just invite more people to just be like, what's the coolest thing you can think of? Like that would just be the best. Yeah, I don't see a downside to it personally.
So you mentioned the chosen one trope there, which is, I think, a favourite, especially kind of in sci-fi. You kind of want to have that that hero, whether they know it or not, that they're the one. Yeah. So how did Asha kind of come to be?
Her and Obi both came into my mind very like fully formed, them as a duo, and I found other characters sort of harder to find or harder to like flesh out, but they were always so clear in my mind. And I think the main sort of emotion that I sort of led with Asha is her anger, because sometimes, you know, you get this like very prevalent stereotype with black women, like even in the workplace or, you know, just in life, where it's like, oh, as soon as you assert yourself, suddenly you're angry or suddenly you're bullying somebody. And it's like can be so harmful, and also it can be harmful on your own mental health, because you suddenly start to think like, am I just this horrible aggressive person that people find really hard to get on with? And like I've been in that situation and it's just really horrible, but there was something so cathartic to me about balancing that stereotype with also the fact that yes, a lot of the time I am angry because of the way that the world is, and the injustices that I see every single day make me furious. And I think she's such a good example of somebody who's been you know, lived this really awful and hard life, and the main thing that she is just furious that this is the position that she's in and this is her life, and all she wants to do is just break out of it and leave. But it's so complicated to sort of throw off that the feeling of oppression or the oppressive like society. So she's trying to sort of, her anger is like a big driving force towards doing that in the first book, and then we'll explore other emotions from her in the second and third. But yeah, I thought that was such an interesting character to explore. It was just a black woman, young black woman who's very angry, and rightfully so. I liked writing that.
And the obviously having the dual protagonists and kind of the dual timeline, which is again kind of such a great thing to have.
Yeah, I'm so glad about that. It's quite controversial, I think, because they're quite two separate. They could almost be two different books.
Yes, yeah, but they when the characters do kind of, they almost kind of complete parts of each other, which is just fantastic. But
Thank you.
Did you find it difficult to keep track of those two very like distinct timelines?
Yeah, I did. I think it was weird. In the first sort of iterations and drafts, I didn't really find it difficult at all. It was a very instinctual, and I said in another talk that I did, which was like I found it easy to keep track of because I was very certain about the emotional beats for everybody. So if I sort of organised the plot around, you're feeling this way because of this, which then leads you to feel like that, and then that, everything kind of made a lot of sense. But then once I sort of was being like professionally edited, then questions were arising, and I was like, oh god, I didn't think of that. But it was good because I felt I had a very solid foundation of just like, you know, maybe some timelines were messed up or whatever, but I had a very solid emotional base to then build from, to sort of make sure everything lined up. But yeah, I think at one point my editor suggested that we cut a whole chapter in the Regency timeline, which I was like, okay, I totally agree with this, like as an idea, but then it did mess up the balance of everything else. So I had to sort of go and take another chapter, cut that in half, expand it, move it, which was actually very rewarding, and I think made the book stronger. But yeah, I think you've got to make sure that people aren't sort of getting almost too attached. Not even too attached, but that they're getting bored, I guess, of one thing, and they're like, oh, I'm just flicking through to get to the next timeline. But I think the best way to do it is to kind of like try and get the reader to love both equally, and also to just, even if they're a bit disappointed when they turn the page and it's in another section, to be so quickly immersed in the next chapter that they almost forget about that disappointment until the next time, and then it's a nice surprise to be back in both timelines. But I think it's hard to juggle, and in book 2 I think it's going to be even harder because it's totally separate basically.
Right, okay.
So that'll be interesting. But you know, well, I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell.
Yes,
I just consider that a masterclass in like short fiction, long fiction, like, and everything. It's amazing. And he's so good in that book because you start, you know, the next section, because there's like 7 stories in one book. And when people are like, oh, the dual timeline was hard to follow in my book, I'm like, you've not seen anything yet. But so he's got 7 books within one book, and they're all sort of like pastiches of like a genre, and you get so disappointed every time a new one starts. And then within about 3, because you love the characters from the previous story and the sort of aesthetic that he's created and the genre like callbacks that he's like including, and then you get about 3 pages into the next one and you're like, no, this is my favorite, I don't want to leave this. And he does it every single time for me, I found. And so that was a big inspiration for me, was basically just making everyone really love all the characters so that, you know, it was not disappointing to read about them.
Yeah, it can be. I think you can definitely tell when it's worked, and it definitely did in Principle of Moments, because you remember where that person is.
Yes.
Then you read the other character, then you come back. And
That's
I think,
totally.
I think it's very, you're not like, oh God, where?
Yeah, I don't think it's that confusing in the Principle of Moments. I think it's quite clear, and I worked quite hard to make sure that it was clear. And yeah, leaving like little cliffhangers, so as soon as you get back to the next chapter, oh God, yeah, I remember they're in this situation. I think that helps a lot. And also just making the characters feel familiar. So no matter what crazy escapade they're in, you remember where they are, like emotionally, can help you to get back into the story.
Yeah.
So yeah,
definitely. Did you have to do much kind of research into the Regency era?
yeah, so this is interesting. I actually did do a fair amount of research into it. I'm having to do a lot more research for the second one,
Right.
because the second one is about a lot of just like walking around London, and kind of like looking at historic buildings and walking through different roads. So it's like, right, I've really got to figure out which was which, whereas in the first book it was all very much like, oh, there's a magical explanation for how they got from A to B. So there was less research involved there. But picking which monarch I was going to like loosely base my character of Prince George off was interesting, and that was probably where I did a lot of the research, because there were a few like viable candidates, but he was definitely the best overall, so that's why I did there. And also having to try and find a sort of a lineage that would work. So he's not actually the Prince Regent, he's like very loosely based off him, but trying to sort of delete people from the lineage and replace, so that it would just be a little blip in the timeline, as opposed to something that then changes the course of history by inserting him into the plot. Was quite hard, but I think I managed it, hopefully.
We have to obviously touch on the just the romance between Obi and George is phenomenal, but you know, it just feels a very, 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 very kind of real relationship. And not only do you have the, you know, a queer interracial relationship in a period of time where that would have
never happened,
yeah,
exactly.
but also that you have, you know, a member of the royal family. So yeah, how did that kind of relationship?
I just led with that from a point of like, I was writing the opening pages and I kind of was like, there's a time traveller, you know, who's Obi, and like something's gonna happen and I really want him to be in this kind of like relationship with someone, and I didn't know who it was gonna be. I didn't know who it was going to be, and then I just wrote down like a prince, and I was like, a time traveler and a prince, that's so romantic, and also is the kind of thing that would definitely happen in like a fantasy book with maybe like white characters or something. It wouldn't be seen as like, it would almost be seen as natural, because you're going to balance the power dynamic in a relationship, all that kind of stuff. And then, but when I sort of wrote it down, I kind of had a moment where I was like, oh, that's a bit like subversive, isn't it? Like that's a bit like, ooh, which I think is so interesting, because maybe a writer, maybe a white writer might not have had that same feeling, because it might not have felt so out there or kind of crazy, or unrealistic, because you could have sort of made time period accurate excuses for why they might have crossed paths and stuff. But I just thought, you know what, the fact that I'm having a moment of pause of like, oh, should I do this, means that I should absolutely do it. And if it challenges me, it will challenge other people. And I think you'll, you know, definitely get comments being like, this would have never happened, ha 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 ha. And it's kind of like, okay, like, you know, a galaxy far, far away, like, I'm sure that would have never happened, you know? Like, I don't think they're really out there fighting with lightsabers, you know what I mean? But you love the story, and you love the romances, and you love the characters, and I just think that a huge part of what I want to do as an author is bringing that kind of outrageous sort of dynamics and like explorations of different characters to like a new audience with new characters. So it felt very natural to me writing it the whole time after I sort of not even put aside, but just considered my own reaction to it and thought, okay, this means I have to go for it.
Yes.
And then I just went for it, and I don't know, I think it works, and I think their relationship is, you know, often one of people's favourite parts of the book. And I just think it does feel, I think their relationship almost epitomizes what I wanted to do with the whole book, which is take familiar settings, tropes, and character sort of like dynamics, and just refresh them and shake them up a bit and make them a bit topsy-turvy, and kind of like, introduce new points of view to a very established narrative. And I think their relationship does that, and it's also just really fun to write. And I like that you said it feels like a real relationship, because I wanted to achieve that in the sense that neither of them are really sure what's going on. They're kind of circling each other a bit, but they do have these deep feelings for each other that they sort of can't help, and they really want to explore. So that's definitely a huge theme of book 2 as well. Yeah,
I can imagine the people you mentioned who may have an issue with a galaxy far, far away also have an issue with things like Bridgerton and stuff.
Yeah.
And those people,
Yeah, I mean, you're a lost cause, you know what I mean? If you want to come, we'll welcome you in, do you know what I mean? If you want to change your mind, but I'm like, okay, it's not really for you at the end of the day. Like, you're right, I think, like, Bridgerton season 2 is one of my favourite seasons of television ever made, and I think if you're kind of like iffy about it, then maybe this isn't the book for you.
So coming back to diversity, I think this kind of ties in with your Doctor Who novel very well, because we obviously have our first black Doctor, which is oh my god,
stolen my heart already. Like within 5 minutes I was gone. Like.
So how did Church on Ruby Road come to be?
Yes, so I worked with the BBC maybe like 3 years ago now, on another project for Doctor Who, which was like this really ambitious like multimedia project that never got off the ground. But I had such a great time on that, and I was so like upset that I was like, not upset, but I was kind of like, oh, I really hope that I can work with them one day. Like, I hope that's not the end of the line for me with Doctor Who. And luckily it wasn't. A few years later, they got in contact with me, via my agent, and were like, oh, we're thinking of doing some new novelizations, would you be on board? And obviously I immediately was just like, yes, please, like I would love to do anything that you have sort of around. And I knew they'd done short stories before, and like anniversary like special collections, which I thought were amazing. And I knew about the Target novelizations because I'd read them as a kid. I remember seeing them in the library and being like, but it's a TV show, not a book, and picking them up and being like, this is crazy, and like loving a few of the books. And then they sort of revealed to me what it would be. They sent me a script, and I didn't know what the script was. They were like, we've sent you the script of the episode we want you to adapt. And I was like, okay, cool, not really thinking about it. And I opened it up and saw like Christmas special, like Shoot to Get Well, and I was like, this can't be real. Like, this is crazy. And like, again, obviously Russell T Davies wrote the script, and I was like, oh my god, I'm getting to adapt this. And I did feel a bit of pressure, but then I kind of just thought, don't think about it, because if they hadn't asked you if they didn't want you to put your own spin on things, they wouldn't have asked you to do it. So I kind of tried to just make it as me as possible, whilst also obviously respecting the work of a master. But yeah, I had such a great time writing it, and it was such a learning curve as well to adapt from a script to a book, and also to adapt somebody else's story, because I've never done anything like that before. It's always been original fiction. To be fair, that's not entirely true. It's funny because when I was writing it, I was like, this feels like writing fan fiction in like the best possible way. So I was having a lot of fun because I was like, I feel like I already know the characters, I already know the like stakes and the plot, but it felt like fan fiction because it was mainly just really expanding for me upon their emotional lives, and just like thinking like, who are these people really, what keeps them awake at night, what are the sort of, we know that they go from this location to this location and say these words, but what's going on under the surface, what are they thinking? And that was just so much fun for me. I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to do more. And I say it was like writing fan fiction with the utmost respect for fan fiction and the craft. So yeah, I felt very lucky to be able to do that for such an incredible brand like Doctor Who. It was just amazing. And the fans are so nice as well. And I consider myself a massive fan. Like, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. So getting to talk with fellow fans about the show and about the episode has just been like such a dream come true. I've loved every second of it.
Oh, because obviously we had the signing the other week
Yes,
for the Target novels
exactly.
and stuff.
It was amazing. That was such a highlight of,
I was
of
gonna
the whole
say, like,
process.
just the whole thing, and even obviously I don't normally work weekends, but if it's ever a Who event, I'm just like, yeah, I'll go cover it.
Oh, good. Yeah, everyone's so nice, and like I met all the other writers, and they're such lovely guys. And I just felt like I'm being welcomed into the. I've had a few messages from people being like, "Welcome to the Whoniverse," which I love. I half of me wants to reply like, "I've been in the Whoniverse, like I've been here for ages," but I understand what they're saying, that I get to contribute to the canon of Doctor Who, which is just such a privilege. And yeah, I just loved every second of it. Everyone is so nice, and I'm just so pleased to be involved in Doctor Who in an official capacity now. I'm loving that.
And you're off to the States?
Yeah, I'm going to Gallifrey One convention. I can't wait. It was so funny when they first invited me. I was like, is this, I almost thought it was a scam, because I was like, this is too good to be true. Like, this can't be real, that they're offering to sort of like host me in LA, and I just get to talk about Doctor Who for a weekend. That surely, how is that real? But it is real, and I'm very, very excited to be going, so I'm just gonna have the best time. And I know certain people there already from the previous project that I did, so it'll be nice to just be back together.
I would love if that interactive project kind of comes.
I know. I don't even know how much I'm allowed to say about it. I don't know if it will ever. It
may not at this point, but
it would have been so cool. It would have been awesome. Like, I don't know what I can say, but there was like a video games writer involved. There was two novel writers, like comics. Like, it was like a really big thing. But yeah, I hope they take the concept one day and use it for something else, because it would literally be so cool.
A Who game, because if you think about, so many franchises have
video games. I think they could really make something cool with the Doctor Who video game, like the settings and it would just be so cool.
You could even, like, I was just thinking, just because I'm playing Mortal Kombat 1 at the moment, you know how they have like guest characters and like DLC characters, and they've got like Omni-Man and stuff in Mortal Kombat 1. You could actually have one of the Doctors as like a DLC character. That
would be very cool. Or even as well, I was just thinking,
or like Meep.
Oh my god, bring back the Meep. I love the Meep so much.
Bring back the Meep. It's funny, I was listening to this morning, getting ready before coming into the office, I was listening to a podcast you recently did about your Who novel.
Yes, oh my gosh.
You were saying about how like watching Who when you're younger, and kind of like almost watching it alone, because of the whole kind of geek thing.
Yes,
it's become a bit cooler of late.
A little bit. Yeah, I think it's definitely changed a bit since I was younger. But yeah, I used to always watch it by myself or with my sister. But I was a bit more religious than she was. But we found it together, watched it together, and it's such a lovely memory. But yeah, none of my friends have ever really been massive Doctor Who fans. I've never really engaged with the community in that sense, just because it never really occurred to me. I don't know why. It was just such a private hobby of watching it and sort of being obsessed with it, that it just never occurred to me. So I've just been overwhelmed by just like, because suddenly I'm in it now, and it's so nice. Like, it's lovely. I'm kicking myself I didn't join sooner.
Do you think little Esmie would have realised what potentially your future could be?
I don't. Do you know what? I think she almost knew more than I know now. Like, even after my first... Do you know what? It's so interesting that you say this, because in the book Ruby Sunday, her whole thing in the first episode is that she doesn't know when her life's going to begin or what she's even doing. I think she's sort of just... I think she's about 19, so she's just sort of left school, and she's like, I don't know what's going on. And I think that's such a relatable feeling to anyone, like, who doesn't know what, they're doing in their life, but also to me. And I think it's interesting, because I think younger me would have had such a clearer idea of what exactly I would be doing. And if I told her, like, I'm writing Doctor Who books, she'd be like, as you should, or something like that. Whereas now I'm kind of, oh my god, I feel so lucky to even be considered for this. But yeah, I think she would have had a more crystal clear view of what I wanted to do than I even do now. I think she'd be very proud and very happy though. So I'm just trying to really honour what she would have wanted for me and do, because I was younger when I started writing this, and it's been an idea that's obviously taken me far. So I've got to, you know, pay my respect to the girl who came up with the idea.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, she'd be really happy. Yeah, it makes me emotional.
So to wrap up the interview today, so we've got 2 more questions.
Yes.
So what are you working on next? And obviously by the sounds of things, I think it's obviously the next.
Yeah, it's the next Principle of Moments book. My deadline's quite soon. I'm feeling good about it, but it's been such a wildly different experience. Even just having, you know, advanced copies went out, like maybe, I can't even remember, like a good few months before the book came out. So you're already starting to get a bit of feedback there while I was deep in the process of writing it. And then like people will just, you know, they'll message you their opinions and stuff. And so it's like, okay, cool. Which is, I'm so glad people are enjoying it. But to be in the middle of the process and suddenly going from total solitary confinement writing with, you know, my editor being the only person and my agent who's ever read the book really, and told me that they've read it, to suddenly having all these like opinions floating around is very different. And in some ways it's really helpful. In some ways I need to get better at just drowning it out. But yeah, I'm enjoying the process so far. And I think it goes back to my last answer for the question of just like, I'm a lot older now than when I really set the first bones of this down on paper. So I'm really trying to honour what I would have thought was cool, or what I would have thought was, you know, worthwhile writing when I was younger, because that's at the end of the day, that's the core of the story. So there are a few things where I'm like, I can't believe I'm writing this, but I'm also having loads of fun. Like, it really frees you up to kind of go crazy with the story. And I think that's one thing I want to carry through in the second book, that as I'm writing, I'm really trying to stay true to that. It's like, remember that I'm not trying to do anything too serious, and I'm not trying to like win a Nobel Prize or like a Pulitzer Prize with this book. I'm literally just want people to open it and have the best time ever. That's literally my only real goal. So I just really want to stay true to that and hope that it's just a really fun time again. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now, and a few other things, but I'm not talking about
Shall
that.
remain.
Yeah, exactly.
And to finish off, what are you currently reading, watching, and if you game, what do you play?
Okay, I'm reading 2 books. They're so different. I'm reading A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsh. Love that. I picked that up in Edinburgh and I'm like maybe 60% of the way through. I love it. I literally am obsessed with it. I think it's so good. I just love, like, I hope it's not rude to say, because this obviously is an author's job, but like there's just the consistency and commitment to the time period, the language, the descriptions, everything. It's so immersive and so good, and I'm just loving it. I think she's so smart. And I'm at the moment, what am I watching? Oh, I started watching Interview with a Vampire, which took me a while to get into, but oh my god, it's so good. I think I'm on about episode 3 or 4 now. I'm just blown away. I really don't know why I wasn't expecting a lot. I just didn't go in with any expectations. And by the end of the first episode, I was like, next. Like, I want to watch the next episode. And I just been kind of like, I'm watching that, which I'm just loving it because it's so good. I don't really game. The last video game I played was The Last of Us 2.
Wow. Okay.
And then I watched the show.
Oh god.
Yeah, I know. I honestly, I feel like we needed a moment of silence because it was just so good. And I honestly kind of I really want to write something apocalyptic and to do with like the end of the world and like what happens after humans are gone, or like whatever, like there's only a few people left. That's a subject that fascinates me. And I don't play video games. It was my partner who was playing video games, and he was like showing me how to do it. And yeah, I would love to get into gaming more. I want to play, I think N.K. Jemisin said like Mass Effect is one of her favourite video games. So I'm like, if I'm ever going to play video games, that's the one I want to start with. I don't know if it's beginner friendly, but I'm going to try my best.
I think it would be. Like, I mostly play like JRPGs and like Final Fantasy and stuff like that, but I'm also like considered as one of the zombie specialists here.
Okay.
So I play a lot of Resident Evil and stuff as well.
Okay, awesome.
But my partner keeps saying you would love Mass Effect.
Yeah, apparently it's amazing.
It's got a big chunky story in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like if I was gonna play a video game, it would have to have a really good story. That's why I loved Last of Us, because it was so like character driven and like, oh, I just loved it. It was so good. I want to play video games more.
Just trying to shoot things through tears.
Yeah, right. Like that just was so traumatizing. Oh, it's a zombie. Like, okay. Yeah.
Oh, it's a clicker, quick.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, like, you've just reconsidered what it means to be human, like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, it was really good.
It's very intense. So on that scary zombie clicker note, we're going to end the interview today because we've got obviously a few books to sign.
Yes, I'm so excited.
So very excited. And if you want to grab a signed copy, there'll be a link on our website, and also all of our stores will have signed copies. So if you don't shop on forbiddenplanet.com, pop into your nearest store. But we will see you next time.
Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.